Welcome to episode 14 of our weekly Guitar Hangs with Nick Granville in Wellington, myself in Auckland. It's been another quiet weekend for me, and how about yourself, Nick?
Yeah, the same actually. I didn't have any gigs in the weekend, but I did go, and actually there's a new jam session that started in
Oh,
Wellington.
nice.
And it's kind of it's really a jazz jam session, but I think they're open to a lot of different things. But I went along and sat in for a tune on that, which was good. And then I went to, that same night I went to a gig that was happening at Parliament.
Okay.
Yeah, so I had a speaker's invitation
Oh, nice.
to come, which has pretty much never happened before. But it was the New Zealand School of Music big band conducted by Roger Fox.
Cool.
Because it's New Zealand Music Month, they had the big band in there playing, and of course, a bunch of the PMs came along. The members of Parliament, and they were all hanging around watching the music. So it's good to have a bit of culture in Parliament, you know. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, nice.
But I've got a couple of big gigs coming up. I've got playing the Wellington Jazz Club this Sunday, and we're playing all original music, all my tunes. It's my band.
Nice.
So got a 5-piece band together: drums, bass, guitar, piano, and saxophone. A bunch of really good players. Louisa Williamson's from LAB. A bunch of different people like Nick Tipping, people like that, and playing a bunch of my tunes, which should be fun. Something I don't do very often.
You have to handle shots.
Yeah, these guys all read really well, so
Nice.
it's like we had a quick rehearsal for about an hour the other night. We're good to go. And then I've got the Hut Sports Awards next week, which is I think I might have told you about that. And I think there's like a 50-piece orchestra or 70-piece orchestra, something like that, and then choir and lead vocals, and Lisa Tomlins is usually one of the singers, so she's always great.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just good fun to play that stuff, and we're playing a lot of Queen stuff, so we rehearse Tuesday, then we do a dress rehearsal, because there's lights and dances and all kinds of stuff on the Wednesday, and then it's the show on Thursday, and then they do a free concert the following night, because all the stage and everything's set there, so that's pretty cool.
Are you going to FM3 it, or are you going to take the big one?
I think I'll take the FM9, yeah. I'm tempted to take an amp and just run it into an amp. I mean, tempted to do it because it is a big room. Like, this space is huge. So I can get away with kind of cranking it, especially my little deluxe. I reckon I could crank that quite comfortably and then just running the FM9 as effects only. But I probably won't. I'll probably take the FM9 and just run it.
Yeah.
With an FR, I think.
I was
'Cause
thinking...
I know what'll happen. I'll start playing and the string players will whinge at me, and next thing you know.
Yeah. You know that Mesa Boogie you have, you could very easily have that loop converted to a series loop, and then you can just jack into the return.
Yeah, I've thought about that, but that amp is really heavy, and I just hate it. I mean, I like it actually. It's got a really good clean sound. I just don't like it for the effects loop part of it.
Yeah.
Because I did think about that, but it's way too heavy to use as an FR monitor. My two little 8-inch, I've got a head rush, and I've got a Laney that's a little 8-inch, and the pair of them in stereo, and the two 8s. You'd think an 8-inch speaker wouldn't get a lot of bottom end, but it's huge. And it's 1,000 watts each side, so I got more than enough power, more than enough spread. Everything sounds fantastic in stereo because all the delays and reverbs are. So that's what I'll probably do. And those things weigh nothing. You can pick them up. Whereas the Mesa Boogie, the Boogie would be really good for someone who plays kind of more metal, rock type stuff and wants a good clean sound. So.
Yeah, I mean, even as a just a powered speaker, once that loop is fixed, it's just a matter of converting it into a series loop, which is not a very hard task. But once
I saw someone selling a little Blues DeVille, Blues DeVille, the little 1x12 40-watt tweed. They were in the 90s, but they have an effects loop on them, and I thought, gee, that would actually 40-watt single 12-inch would make a really good amp for a FR monitor.
Yeah.
But also, if you had a jazz gig and you just wanted to plug straight into it, it's got reverb, it's got 40 watts is plenty for that. So
Yeah.
I've never particularly liked those Hot Rod Deluxes too much, but the tweed ones were really good.
Yeah, I think the Hot Rod ones probably had a little bit more gain on the drive channel, but to be honest, I've never used the drive channel on those. I just used the clean and put some pedals in front.
Exactly.
In which case, I mean, I got by on a couple of gigs. In fact, I used to use them as wet amps and like a wet, dry, wet thing. I would just say, can you just send two hot rod divils and then have them on the outside just doing effects only? Just
That'd
save
be
me the
cool.
hassle of lugging, a power amp and two wet cabs and stuff like that. As long as those were on the
They've
rental
kind of
rate.
become the default backline, haven't they?
Yeah.
Where, like, you can pretty much get one anywhere. We bought four of them when I taught at the university, and we had four of the two of the 212s and two of the 4x10s, and two of them didn't work brand new out of the box.
Oh dear.
Yeah, they're making them with cheap components
Yeah.
now and all that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, because the concept of them is actually that's essentially what the Landau amp is built off. It's basically one of those with a
Yeah.
different kind of
It's the 60-watt
speaker.
one, the hot rod DeVille. So they put the V-type speakers in them, and they took out the drive channel and they added a second master volume, so you can get a volume bump if you have to.
Yeah.
But I think they also did some work on the power amp as well. So like I'm guessing Landau would be a bit pickier than said like I wanted the notes to be a bit bigger or whatever. So
Well, that's kind of where those Tweed Deluxes work and Tweed DeVilles work really well. The old ones, they have a drive channel, but it's really low gain.
Right.
So really, all it is a boost channel, and that's what I've used it as is sort of a boost. My old guitar teacher John O'Connor had one. It's still one of the best amps I've ever played through. Just a sweet clean tone.
what's your favorite rental amp you've ever got?
None of them.
Must be smart.
They've pretty much all suck. No, I've had a few surprises actually. In Christchurch, there was a gig down there, and there was a guy who had a '60s Vox AC30, like an original AC30, and actually that sounded really good. And I'm not a Vox guy at all. I don't normally like Vox amps. I find them very mid forward and not a lot of bottom end and warmth to them. And they really only sound good if you really can push them hard and get them to break up. They don't do a particularly sweet clean tone,
Yeah.
in my opinion. But that one was sweet, man, and because it'd been used in a rental house for like 40 years, and it was
Well broken in.
that broken in well, yeah, and it had some mods done to it and stuff. That was a pretty sweet amp. I played through a couple of old twins around that have been really nice. The Fender Twin used to be the default backline, and now it's become. I played a few Marshalls that I quite liked. There was a Plexi that I had one time. Wasn't an original Plexi, but it was like one of the early reissues, and that actually sounded really good. Like that amp was sweet. But most of the time, it's a pain in the butt, and backline amps suck. And it's one of the reasons I've kind of switched mostly to the modeler now is just don't want to deal with backline. It's also the reliability of backline. I've had so many times when they're provided and they just don't, either not what you need or just don't work.
Don't work, yeah. Yeah, there's a
it's just
fine line between broken in and broken.
Yeah, exactly. I'd rather have a lesser amp that worked
Yeah.
than have a good amp that's like
That
giving
was
you.
problematic, yeah.
I think I
have-
told you about that hot rod DeVille in Auckland that was pulsing like a tremolo, and it was and that thing was brand new. It had done like 5 or 6 gigs, and I was stuck. I was in Auckland. It's the Auckland Philharmonic. I'm just about to play the gig. There's nothing I could do.
I'll tell you about some pleasant surprises I've had. There was this one gig randomly. We landed up in this place called Roorkee, which is a small college town in the north of India. And you wouldn't expect them to have like the best backline, but we showed that they had 2 Marshall Bluesbreaker combos, as
Oh, those are great.
and I see just the perfect water instrument. 2 of them in stereo was really nice. There was one gig in I think it's called Sint Maarten, the Dutch side of that island. Where the planes land really low, somewhere
No.
in the Caribbean. Yeah, it's like a
Oh, yes, I do. Where people sit on the beach when the plane comes up.
that place, right? So there was like a nice, sweet blue snakeskin Misa Boogie Mark III.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, I didn't bother unplugging not breaking out my pedal board from the case. I just plugged straight into the amp and did the gig with that.
Actually, I have had a few boogies that have been really nice backline. A couple of them actually. There's a guy in Wellington, Riddish Pabu. I don't know if you know him, but Riddish has a lot of really good backline gear, and he's always said, whatever you want, he goes, just let me know, and he'll sort of add it to his list to buy. To be, because he's pretty much the main backline guy here, and he has good stuff. Like he's got a couple of twins, he's got a couple of Blackface Deluxes, he's got yeah, all the best stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Drums, the whole lot. So, but yeah, I don't know about so many times a backline. But then it's not always smooth sailing with the modeler either. I found, you know, I remember getting to one gig in Invercargill when we got there, and they said, "Oh yeah, there's a powered speaker you can use for your monitor," and it was this Mackie thing that had a flappy speaker
Oh,
coil
dear.
on it.
Yeah.
So it was like all the low notes were buzzing, and I was just like, man, even when you go direct, you can't win
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
But
I think
such
that
is life.
that's why a lot of people have switched to in-ears, but then as we
Mm.
know, those are not fun.
No, I don't like them either. I mean, I've got mine in at the moment, but
Yeah.
yeah, they just, I don't know. There's something very unnatural about them. Well, the solution to them, I think, is to run a microphone in the room, but then again, that becomes more gear and
No,
more
the
hassle. And
the solution is like a world-class monitor engineer who knows what he's doing. That's the answer.
yeah, well, the solution is to just be able to let you do what you want to do. Right,
Yeah.
it's why they booked you to perform, is because you do what you do, and then they control it and say, no, you can't run your amp loud, and you can't do this, and you can't,
Yeah.
you know. We were talking about that the other day. Someone was being booked for a whole lot of gigs, and they kept telling him he had to have a singer with his band, and he was like, yeah, but I don't have a singer in my band. That's the whole thing. And they were like, well, that's the gig, you know. And he's like going, don't
Yeah.
book my band then, you know. Sort of that
There
whole
was
thing.
this one gig where the sound check was like always very lengthy, and the monitor guy, there was a whole bunch of like different sources. I think they must have been running like over 100 line-ins to the mix, or various instruments and stuff. So this guy would just give me the iPad, and he would go and to everyone and make sure like the lines were all working. But while he was doing that, I was EQing everything. That's
Yeah,
for my mix, and then he would like look at it, and then he would just like keep the EQs, for everyone or whatever. But
perfect.
that was perfect because you could just mix yourself, and there was enough time to like really nitpick and be like, oh, the bass needs a little bit more mid range and that sort of thing. And it was great. That felt like you're playing a studio session almost because of the amount of control that I
Yeah.
had. It compressed the overheads and all that sort of stuff. Like like these little tweaks. Otherwise, on most gigs, they don't even give a shit about that. It's like
Yeah. A lot of the theatre shows do that here. They have an app that you can usually download, and you connect into the mixing desk, and then you can control your own monitors, which is really important because the thing is, like, it's not just like a set and forget. You might be like, okay, I need lots of guitar for this song, but I need almost
yeah.
hardly any guitar for the next one, and all that kind of stuff. And I remember when I did Kinky Boots last year, the MD said to me, there was one song, he said, I want you to turn up by about 30% for the song and just like full on drive. So, of course, as soon as I did that, it screwed my in-ears because all of a sudden I can't hear anything else except for
Yeah.
guitar. But he wasn't relying on the sound man to turn it up, so he wanted me to just crank the shit out of it, you know. But then, of course, now my in-ear mix is screwed, so of course I'd go into the app, I'd turn it down 30%, so I could still hear the drums and bass and everything, and it's not the ideal way to do it. Much better if the sound guy just turned it up
Turn
when it
it up
needed,
when it needed. Yeah.
but that was kind of what happened. We had a few questions here that I noticed and different things that I
Yeah.
thought we should
You
just
can
go
go
through.
through those.
Yeah, there was one here from Upgroove Beyond and Music NZ, which is Noel Hayvice, and Noel said, "Hey, we're on the Nick. I found parts of that interesting, intriguing, even though mostly I don't understand all the technical about any of this tech gear or technical musical terms. I made it to the end. I think this is a great thing you're doing, as no other Kiwi-based musicians are doing anything remotely like this. Keep it up. Hope it takes off." I thought that's interesting. Is there other Kiwi musicians doing a podcast type thing like this? I
I
can't think of any, but
I know there
maybe.
was one called "Don't Give Up Your Day Job" that a couple of friends of mine had featured on.
Oh, that's Danny McCrum.
Yep.
Yeah, I was a guest on that. As at this point, I don't know that they're still doing it, are they?
I'm not sure. And then I
Oh,
think Mr. Glynn was doing a thing with like different builders in New Zealand, but not really. I don't know.
there's a
It
new one started called the Aotearoa Guitar Show or something. I saw
okay.
Glenn was on there. Speaking of Glenn, he had a question here, and he said, "Gentlemen, how would you go about starting out in the world of DAWs? I'm thinking of recording myself with backing tracks. It'd be good to hear your experiences."
Okay. You go first. And I'll spill some beans.
Yeah, starting out, buy Logic for $199. It's your best value kind of pro level DAW. And they've just done an update, which is fantastic. I haven't yet downloaded the update, but it's just come out, and it now has you can split audio files into stems, like you can do with Moises, but except it's built into Logic
Oh,
now.
cool.
So that's fantastic because often I need to make backing tracks and stuff for my YouTube things that I do
Yeah.
every day. So that's one I'm going to be using a lot. But they've put new plugins in there. There's a new saturator plugin and all kinds of stuff that have all just included. There was a time when Pro Tools was the industry standard, and it kind of is amongst pro studios.
Hmm.
But all the composers I know, they all use Logic, not Pro Tools. So for me, Logic made more sense. There are some good free ones around. I've not really used many of them because I just stick with Logic. Logic's a one-off payment. That's a good way to go.
Yeah.
And getting started out with, I think the best way to learn any software is just dive in and give it a go. Try and go, can I record a guitar sound in? And if it doesn't work, then you try and figure out why.
Yeah.
And you try and just improve your processes. YouTube's a fantastic resource. There's lots of really good things on there now. So if you're recording yourself with backing tracks, that'd be a great way to go. What do you think?
My two bits is if you're on a Mac, you already have GarageBand, so maybe start with that before you want to spend the money on Logic. If you can at least make sure your basic audio interface, etc., is working. Because my dad wanted to start getting into some home recording, so I'm setting him up with the GarageBand and a little 2-in 2-out interface. But if you're not on a Mac, obviously Logic I don't think works on Windows. But there's a good software called Reaper, which is like I think around 50 US. So for an inexpensive DAW, that's one I'd suggest because it can it does everything the main DAWs do. They're not really crippled in that sense, but it's pretty customizable. There's plenty of information available. The only thing is getting your feet wet with that. Maybe it may take a little bit more effort to get started, but then once you do, then the inertia keeps you going. Another thing Reaper also does, which a lot of DAWs don't do, is it opens this format called MOGG, and it's a multi-track audio format. And a lot of these rock band and things like that, those games, the audio files were encoded as MOGG. So this thing, once you open those, you can actually get the original multi-track to open up, and then you just mute the guitar or solo the guitar and play along, that sort of
Oh,
thing.
wow.
Yeah. So that's it. That's another cool thing it does, which a lot of other DAWs don't do rather. My personal favorite is Cubase. I've been on that for a long time because I've learned Pro Tools and I've learned Cubase, and both are pretty, like, if you know one, the other shouldn't be that confusing. Cubase comes with a bunch of its own sounds, just like Logic, so it's very easy to get started, like building tracks. But if you want, something more organic, then basically any DAW is gonna, be able to do that.
Now,
So
Cubase is Steinberg, isn't it?
it is Steinberg, yeah.
Okay. So, because they had Nuendo for a while too,
Yeah.
which was their kind of
Nuendo
similar, isn't it?
Nuendo is basically the same as Cubase. It's just that it has the surround features for your 5.1 and Atmos and stuff like that. So Cubase, I don't think goes up to that level of monitor control. But for a musician, I think like that
You're not
is
gonna
like
use it.
it's a great sounding DAW. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't really need any third party plugins, but if you are going down that route, you would look at Fab Filter. They make great stuff. Sound Toys is really cool, interesting stuff for guitar players especially. The Universal Audio stuff is cool, but you need one of their interfaces, I believe, or now they've started doing some native plugins as well. But they tend to be a bit on the pricier side. But just bang for buck, maybe Fab Filter and like a Valhalla Vintage Reverb, which is a $50 plugin. I think every guitar player would love that because like character full reverbs, like lexicon kind of stuff. Yeah, and then that should be enough to get started, especially with just doing guitar tracks and stuff like that. And with
Yeah,
regards
completely.
to Yeah, with
I'd
regards to
completely
making your
forgotten about
drum.
GarageBand.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, that I was going to say with regards to making your basic drums and bass backing tracks, GarageBand is really helpful because it can take a bit of the guesswork out. Like once you fix a key signature, it starts showing you all the other chords from that same diatonic family, you know, and especially like on the iPad and on the iPhone, it's heaps of fun to just play around with that stuff, because
Yeah,
of
totally. Sorry,
the
I'd completely
tactile
forgotten
control.
about GarageBand. It's a really powerful tool and it's free. I
Yeah,
mean, if you're on Mac, it's a no-brainer. And in a lot of ways, GarageBand is like or GarageBand, if you want to say it like that, is kind of like Logic. It's just a simpler version
it
of it.
is. Yeah, and I
I was
think
just thinking what plugins I have here. I use the S Gear 3 guitar amp one. That's actually really good.
the Scuffum one.
What else have I got? Delays. There's a really good delay that I got. There's actually a free one called DELAYY.
Mm-hmm.
Delay, I think it is. Oh, sorry, it might be DELLAY. Where is it? Let me see if I can find it. DEELAY by Six Sample, and it's free and it's really, really good. Does a lot of very creative kind of delays, with delays that cascade off and all that sort of stuff. That's a good one. The Scuffum amps is 3. And then a few instruments that I've bought different things. There's one called Panda, which is like a lo-fi kind of pianos and things like that,
Oh, nice.
glitchy kind of things. Logic actually has the part of the new update. They've done a. I was just looking. That's why I just logged into it now. They've updated. They had this thing called Session Drummer in there, where you can. If you record a guitar part, it analyzes it and it goes, oh, okay, these are the beats, and it makes up a drum part. And you choose a style. You can go punk, rock, pop, whatever. They've now done the same thing with a bass player and a piano player. Mm-hmm. So you can go, and they're AI based now.
Oh, cool.
So they analyze what you do and they come up with a track. So drum, bass, piano, I mean, there's essentially a backing track.
Yeah.
And again, it's all included. The update was free. So, but GarageBand will have something like that coming soon, if not already.
Cool. Speaking of AI, do you think it can ever come to a point where, as you're playing, it'll react to your playing in real time and create a backing track around that?
Possibly. I mean, as computers get more and more grunty, because that's a lot of processing to do that even by now, because that's going to have to happen in real time. But I think so. I mean, I think it's possible. There's some interesting things. Did you see that Rick Beato interview with Ted Goyer the other day?
I was just watching that the other day.
Yeah, especially that stuff about the how he was talking about AI and about how good old mate Spotify, who everyone loves to hate. I hate them anyway. But Spotify have now created AI artists, and they're putting these AI artists into the top playlists. Mm-hmm. So you can't help but, like, if you play the top playlist, you're going to find this thing. And there's one Swedish name they came up with, and this guy had found it 600 different personalities they've put around this person, so it's not obvious. And then this person is gets more streams than Michael Jackson and Stevie Wonder and the Beatles and all these things. So all the royalties go back to Spotify. It's just wrong, you know what I mean? They just well, anyway, don't get me started on that shit.
The thing is, I mean, there's nothing preventing musicians from just pulling their catalogs from Spotify. Then the thing is, then what they're fighting then is obsolescence. Become just obsolete because no one's listening to what you're putting out. But the most recent, the Tom Bukovac and Guthrie Trap album we spoke about, it isn't on streaming services. It's only been on Bandcamp, and you can buy physical media, which, I'm sure if people actually care about the music and they're well known enough to do that, I'm sure they're going to make a lot more money doing that than relying on their streaming services.
Totally. My last 2 albums, I said, nah, they're not going to streaming services at all, because I've literally seen it cost me sales. I remember I was teaching on this high school workshops, and one of the students said, "Oh, have you got an album out?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do. I've got some here." And he goes, "Oh, how much?" And I was like, $20 or whatever. And he goes, "Oh, hang on a minute." And he looked on Spotify and he saw it and he went, "Oh, no, don't worry." And I was like, fuck. And this was an album that was controlled by the record label, so I had no choice, It was kind of done. So the last 2, which weren't with that particular label or whatever I had more control over, I went, nah, no streaming service. And I just did them Bandcamp. I said, the only place you can get them is Bandcamp. And I figured that way, if people want them, they'll go.
Yep.
You don't have to be everywhere. This idea that if you're everywhere, you'll get discovered is bull. It's never going to happen, right?
Yeah.
You just get lost in the whole thing. You really, what you need to do is, if people want it, they'll go to Bandcamp. And I made it free. I was like, it's free or pay whatever you want. And I had some people. One guy paid $60 for the album, and he said, "This is my way of supporting." He goes, "Had it been seen it in stores, it would have been 20. I could have only paid $20 or $30, but now I can pay 60.
Yeah.
So there you go. And I've had a few people do that sort of thing, which is really lovely. And I do. I bought Tom Bukovac's album off Bandcamp, and
Same.
I'm glad they're doing that.
Because I'd rather have the ability to download those high-res files whenever I want, on whichever computer I'm listening on. And it's not even like hard because they have an app on the phone as well.
Yeah,
So all you do is close one app and open the other. The problem is people like to pick and choose from your things in the middle of their playlist, and that's what the convenience comes from.
Yeah.
So, you'll probably have like one song, if it gets picked up by a playlist, you'll just notice like suddenly the listens, they just shoot up. And compared to the other songs in your catalog, they won't be as much. It's just that one song got picked up by a playlist, and there you go.
I just think there's so many interesting things around that. I remember Neil Cowley, who's a British musician. He put out an album and put it in the jazz category in Spotify and did terribly. And then he decided to rename it as Easy Listening, and all of a sudden he had 1 million streams the next day. So because of the way that it got categorized and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, he was someone who had a name already, and that's kind of the thing. I think that there's better ways to promote your music than trying to think that if you put it on all these things like YouTube. It's a much better way to promote your music than what Spotify, if that's even counted as promotion.
Well, the thing is with YouTube, if you notice, like YouTube Music actually pays you less per stream than Spotify.
Yes, but you're not doing it for that reason.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not doing it to make money. You're doing it to promote it, whereas Spotify is literally about selling your product.
Yeah. And the thing is also like you're competing against just music in Spotify, and on YouTube it's probably competing against everything on YouTube, which is not just music. You know what I mean?
Except YouTube's such a big thing that, and I mean the second biggest search engine in the world is YouTube, right? Yeah. The first being Google, and then YouTube being number 2. Because if people want to know anything, that's where they go. They don't. I don't know that people go to Spotify looking for new things. I think they go to Spotify for things they already know and like. And maybe they might stumble across stuff, but I think it's smaller. I mean, maybe I'm wrong.
Apparently, that's what people use it for, is the recommendation engine built in. Like, oh, if you like this, you'd like that, and then you just put in like an artist like Steely Dan, and it'll make you a Steely Dan radio station. Remember Pandora? Yeah. It's a similar thing. So it'll basically, the algorithm decides, oh, based on this, you'll also like this, which could also be geographically based. Or if you like an artist from this country, you may like another artist from that country. That's something like that, or genre based. And then it'll just make you a whole, and it'll just keep on sending you recommendations, and then based on whether you like it or you don't like it, it'll start feeding you more. But that's what people use it for, as a discovery tool. I don't use it at all. In fact, I listen to music on VLC player on my phone.
Yeah, exactly.
I just drag and drop the albums I want to listen to. It's like, I'm old school that way. I used to have a little carry bag with my Walkman and 6 cassettes.
Man, if it works, it works. You know. We had another question here, and I can't remember if we actually got to this.
Okay.
It was from that guy that came to Palmerston North. I can't remember how to say, because I can only see his handle. I can't see his name. But he says, question: have you guys? Do you remember the guy that took photos from our gig?
I do. Yeah.
What was his name?
I'll have to look it up because I forget names very easily.
Yeah, I can only see a handle, so I can't. Yeah. I'm not sure. But anyway, it says question: have you guys ever been overly impressed with digital emulation of a pedal or an amp that you got the real thing? If so, did it live up to the expectation?
I sat with a friend of mine and we went between the Maxon SD9 and the Hedgehog, whatever model it's called, on the HX. And we went back and forth and dialed it really close to a point where we were fooling ourselves. We couldn't tell which was which. But this was also both going into a really nice amp, So, either one sounded fine. But quite a few actually, I got the univibe and the HX sounding pretty nice. The tremolo sounds nice. The thing is, what you can get caught up in is like saying how similar to the original thing does it sound compared to can I get this thing sounding good and make music with it.
Yeah, exactly. I think his question though is more: have you been so impressed with something that you wanted to go and buy the real thing?
I'll tell you, there's one thing which the digital emulation sounded better than the hardware to me. This Sansamp PSA1, which was this rack
I remember
mount
this.
one, and there was a plugin made by Bomb Factory on Pro Tools,
Yeah, I
and
remember the Bomb Factory stuff.
man, we could get the plugin sounding much better than the hardware. It's so weird.
That is strange. I think for me, the one digital emulation that I've tried a bit is the Friedman BE100 or BE50. I can't remember which one it is. In fact, I could look it up in here.
On the X?
In the Fractal, yeah. And where are we? This is my live tones. It's this one here. This is the Friedman. Turn the mic off. It's just a good kind of martially crunch type thing.
Yeah.
That's the BE version 1 fat, it says. But I was really impressed with that, and it made me go, man, one day I'd love to have an actual Friedman.
Yeah.
Because, trying the digital version, because, you can't get, I don't know anyone who's got a Friedman in Wellington to actually try a real one. So having the emulation did make me go, actually,
You know what you could get is that B100 pedal, which is the preamp, not the little solid state one, the tube preamp that they just came up with. In fact, there was someone selling one on Trade Me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you should check it out.
I have been. This is a super reverb that I've been messing with a bit, and I've been really impressed with that. The emulation. Oh, I've got two of that. Why did I do that? Oh no, this is the one I meant. And it has, like, when you push, that's the gain up on full. It's got that flabby thing that happens with Fender amps when you push them just beyond, and it makes me want to get a super reverb now. Although I have actually had one before, one of the reissues, and I've played a bunch of the old ones, and the super reverb is such a great amp.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm essentially like a Bassman, but a little tighter and brighter, than a Bassman, and a different kind of, is voiced differently.
Yeah, less of that mid range that the Bassman would have. Those Tweeds ones will have a less of the scoop.
Yeah,
exactly. In the blackface or the silverface supers, you could hear that dip at around 500.
Yep.
On the weekend, I mic'd up my my Sir 2i12, which has a vintage 30 and G12 65 speakers. So after ages, like, I listened to a mic'd up cab on the headphones, and then I set it up so I could go between the mic'd up cab and the Ox Stomp and the Sir Load with the same sound on the amp. And I kept on going back and forth. So now the Ox has got I think it's the 2-Rock 2i12, again with that oval cutout at the back, two G12 65s. And I got them sounding pretty close, I mean, there obviously was like a little bit of difference. And what I found interesting is like when the two actual mics, which I have in the cab, which were a 57 and a Bayer M160, there's always a little bit of phase cancellation between the two. The moment you put two mics, on. And then later on in the DAW, you can line it up and, make the waveforms line up precisely. But on the Ox, the phase thing was already taken care of. So, it was like, there was no... so, like, I was getting like a clean sound, like, Now this is that 2x12, and here's the 4x10, which I found very interesting. The funny thing, I was listening to those first two fabulous Thunderbird albums with Jimmy Vaughan, And like that's some of my favorite playing of his. And he was using a Strat into a Tweed Bassman, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
4x10.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it's got a particular mid-range to it, you know. And the moment I stumbled upon that 4x10 Bassman cab in the Ox, I was like, oh, that sounds a little similar. So I kept on, then starting to compare it. And this is this is really cool as well. It's like a 1x10 champ. Oh, 1x8 or something, or 1x10. So suddenly my 100 watt amp starts sounding like a little, combo. Let's put the distortion on. And there's also a 1x12 with the Celestian Blue.
Interestingly, with that sound you just had with the 8-inch,
Yeah.
if you put a 100-watt amp into a single 1x8
It'll blow.
cab, you're going to blow it. Like, there's no way you could do that in real life and get that sound. This is cool, isn't it?
Well, there is actually, if you load that 100 watt amp down and then reamp it, but
But not cranking like that,
not
know,
crank it,
it's
yeah.
like it's going to destroy it.
Yeah, you'll need some sort of attenuation, otherwise, boom, there we go. So that's the Celestian Blue.
They're pretty good emulations, actually. They
Yeah.
sound like they're spot on.
And this is the vintage 34x12. So all that low end's back now. And the greenback one sounds really nice on the cleans as well. Almost like Hendrixy-ish. In fact, I should turn off the reverb and just let you listen to what it sounds like bone dry, because there's a little bit of room on it. Yeah. Quite interesting. With the drive, let's see. Compare that to the vintage 30, which is a little fuller in the mids, I think. I think the greenbacks have more fizz on the top, and the vintage 30s just have that high mid spike, and then it rolls off really sharply after that.
That's been my experience of them for sure, yeah. And it's an interesting thing about the 4x10, like you talked about earlier, is that I remember before I actually had a 4x10 amp, I always thought, well, 10-inch speakers sound smaller than 12-inch speakers, right? But there's an interesting thing that happens when you get 4 of them. You know what I mean? Because you get all that bottom end from the multiple speaker thing, but you get the cut from the 10s as well.
Yeah.
So you kind of get this, this all-encompassing sound. That's just, and it's not like a 4x12 which can bottom out. Some 4x12s just get too, you start doing, and they get too boomy on the bottom, and they just don't work.
There's two more things which are interesting as well. In a 4x10, usually the back is open, right? So you have the sound coming out from the back as well. That's like a big difference. The second thing is the baffle is way smaller than on a 4x12, for example. So it's a lot more, it becomes actually like almost like a membrane, where like those 4 speakers, they physically couple off the baffle. And there's this thing, I don't know if you've seen like where the resonance travels from one to the other, when the whole thing, they start acting like one system, even though they're 4 separate speakers, which is, again, found more in, I don't know, just like a theory of mine, more in a 4x10 because of the size than a 2x12. But interestingly, I have a 2x12 Marshall cabinet where it's like a diagonal thing as well. And that sounds...
Which is quite different, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But to me, it's more like, it sounds a little bit like it's got more of that top end thing that a 4x10 has. Because normally all the horizontal 2x12s I have, they have a different sound. Yeah, I think it's because of that one speaker on top
Yeah.
that you get like that, it hits your ear a little easier, I
Well, it's
guess.
like if you ever get a 2x12 cabinet and put it on its
On its
side and then
side.
put it on its vertical,
Yeah.
and they do sound different.
They do.
I guess because the amount of surface they're touching, but also one speaker's now more at your ear level than the other. So, just the way the sound is created is different. Yeah, interesting thing with basements too, that I find, especially with these Victorias like mine, because they're made out of a lightweight pine. There's no plywood. It's not a plywood or a cheapy cab. It's proper pine. I think they're dovetailed corners and all of that. The whole cabinet resonates.
Yeah.
It's part of why they sound that way. Because you can make them out of other materials. They just don't sound the same. And that thing's actually really, really light. It's surprising because you pick it up and you look at it, you go, oh, it's quite a big amp. And you pick it up and you're like, oh. I still don't want to carry it, but it's...
Yeah. The funny thing is pine is more readily available in New Zealand than Baltic birch ply.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, yeah. Baltic birch ply is actually really expensive in New
Yeah.
Zealand because that's the one that has the least voids in the middle and stuff like that.
That's
and
the
it
thing, you
tends
want
to
marine grade, void free. That's the full name.
actually really expensive.
Marine grade void free Baltic birch ply.
Yeah. Yeah, most of the plywood we get here is crap too, by the way. I mean, I
Yeah.
wouldn't use it for
Yeah,
most things.
because the thing, I've seen some local built cabinets and stuff like that, but I was thinking like a 4x10 cabinet built from pine, and then you get some really nice, Alnico 10s. That would make
I've thought about making my own, about making one out of hardwoods, because I do a bit of woodworking around the house and
you
stuff
do?
here
Okay.
too. I've got a workshop in the garage and that, and I really enjoy it. I've got a table saw and a band saw, and I've got everything I need to do it except for the time. And I've got to be really careful about it actually when I do too much of that stuff, especially if I do too much sanding or stuff. Because I've got a bunch of machine sanders, but you're holding something that's going like this and shaking your hand, and you do that for half an hour, an hour, an hour and a half. Even when you stop, you feel like your whole hand's still shaking because it's got the vibrations going right through there. Then you try and play guitar. It's like, where have all my chops gone? There's none, because you've just physically wrecked your muscles.
Your hand's still vibrating, and then you're playing. And
Yeah. Be nice if there was a benefit like that. Maybe I should get my drill and do a Paul Gilbert, But I've thought about doing making my own cabinet. Actually, thought about making my own guitar too, just for the hell of it, to see, And,
yeah.
I got some nice stuff that I could do that with. Maybe one day.
Or you can do that Jim Little special with the strings across your desk.
Yeah. It's funny, I've had a bunch of people send me some of his videos when he first put his stuff out, and they're like, "See, this guy knows he's a game changer." All right.
Yeah, sure. People forget we buy guitars because we like how they look, most importantly,
Yeah.
Forget how
it's
they
funny you say
sound.
that, because I saw this. I posted this thing. I don't know if you saw it on Instagram about Steve Lukather, and I don't even know if it's a true quote. It probably wasn't even him, but he said there are no great guitars, no great amps. There's only great people,
Yeah.
or something along
No,
those
no
lines.
magic guitars. There's magic people or something.
There's
like
magic
that.
people,
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah. And I thought, it definitely is like that. And I got a message from someone in Germany who's more a sound engineer, but he's with Chris de Burgh.
Okay.
But he found this video of me playing with Chris de Burgh, so he sent me so we've kept in touch since, but he's a guitar player as well. But he sent me a message and said, yeah, it's totally true, man. And he goes, and I'm selling a bunch of my shit for exactly that reason. He said, especially his drive pedals, because he realized that all his drive pedals sound the same to him. Because what he does is, if he gets one other pedal, he tries to make a sound that sounds like the other pedal. Mm-hmm. And then he gets the next pedal and he tries to make it sound like the first one again. So it doesn't matter what gear he is, he's always going for the same approach.
Yeah.
Because that's what he hears in his head. And I thought, it's kind of how I work a bit too. An interesting one like that is Pete Thorne. I don't know if you've heard any of his demos, but he sounds the same on everything.
Yeah.
I hear him play and I go, wait for it. He's going to play like a rock crunch sound, and it's going to be real mid-rangey, and sure enough, doesn't matter what guitar he plays, what amp, whatever, it's like that's a musical approach he has, and he'll just make the gear work for that, you know.
His very first demo was a Sir Badger 18. and I
Oh,
think
that's great.
that's the best demo he ever did. I don't know why.
Yeah.
He just sounds so cool on that particular amp,
Mm.
and apparently Sir sold a bunch of Badger 18s because of that video,
Mm-hmm.
and I went and bought one as well because
Ah.
I was like, I just need a small little 18 watt grab and go kind of a thing, and
Mm.
that was like my main gigging amp here for like years, before I needed a little bit more headroom, but at least
I think I've played a Badger 30.
that's a
I
different
feel like it
sounding
was a
amp. Yeah,
30.
the 30's
Mm.
got two EL 34s, and the 35 has got four EL 84s. But the 18, I think, is kind of unique because it's the only one with a tube rectifier. And so it's got a peculiar little squish, like the way it breaks up is really cool. I mean, it's one amp I kind of still wish I had, but just I couldn't justify keeping it around for the just the one time that I'd use it, that sort of
Yeah.
thing.
I particularly like small amps anyway, and I've always been a combo amp guy, but more and more lately I've been thinking I should just buy heads from now on.
Yeah,
Because heads are easier, and then you can just run a cab, and like even recording here, I could chuck the cab out in the hallway, and would
yeah.
actually work really well.
I mean, in India, it always made sense to have heads because every gig there would be rental speaker cabinets, and I just sort of bring one and not the whole combo.
Mm.
So I just show up with my head and ask for a Marshall or a Mesa. But over here, this is like the scope of those things showing up at gigs is a lot less,
Crazy, huh?
which is why the
That's what I was saying
combo.
about Backline, right? Because Backline, they're just it's the same thing in the UK when I was there. Like all the clubs have amps,
Yeah,
Backline amps. None of them have here. They're about the only gigs I get that there's Backline is like if I'm touring or traveling, or if it's like if they're in town with Backline, it's because you can't get anywhere near it. Like on New Year's Eve on the waterfront, there's 20,000 people there, so you're not driving in with your gear.
yeah,
They're providing drums, bass, and guitar amps. That's about all you can do. So
yeah.
yeah,
The mercy of the vendors.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I've though like carried like if I was going to use rental amps, I used to carry a spare 12VX7 because you never know when reach with a dud, and especially in India, they're notorious for connecting heads to speaker cabs with guitar cables. They never have speaker cables, so I would always have these two heavy duty speaker cables. I mean, till this day, it's something I always carry in the gig bag. Anyway, that's all we should have time for this week, and thank you for your questions. Keep them coming through. We'll see you again sometime next week. Bye bye.
Thanks everyone. Thanks for tuning in.